Welcome to We Should Be Working. This is week 4. I'm Zach Hendrix. That's Jeff Finley. And Jeff, it's good to see you again. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, Zach. Happy to be doing this episode. We're getting back at it. I look forward to every Monday.
Absolutely. Which, by the way, I'm really happy that I know everybody, you all are listening to this in the rears. You already heard it. But Jeff just kicked out this week our intro music for the show, which was phenomenal. By the way, that was a fun development, and I was definitely rocking out to it. Hope you all enjoy it. It was a fun little project, at least on my end, because I didn't have to do any of the work. So how was that process for you?
Oh, dude. So I'm glad that you liked it because I was in the project for so long where I just couldn't even tell what music was anymore. And I just was like, does this even sound remotely good? Is this just corny? Is it cliche? Do podcasts even have rock music as an intro anymore? Or is it all just like some sort of electronic or some sort of violin symphony, like, or moody music, orchestral. I'm like, I don't even know what this is, but I mean, I've got a pop punk history, and you're into this kind of stuff too. So I was like, let's make something like that. We've got this attitude about it, so I'm going to produce something like that. And by the time I sent it to you, I was like, just completely burnt out. But you're like, this rocks. I like it. So I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah, I was blown away by it. I was like, I think for me, as a person that's always wanted to be a musician but have no musical talent, nothing that I've ever really pursued. I played piano and violin when I was younger, but didn't really
Hmm.
enjoy it. I just wanted to be a rock star. Like I just wanted to be up there singing with a band and stuff like that. So, but as a person that loves music and the music creation, when stuff like that comes out, it's like just fascinating to me. It feels like somebody just pulled some gold nugget out of ether and it's out of the ether. And it's just weird to me how those things happen. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. This is so great. Yeah, let's do this. You're like, give me a little bit more time to fit it, to finesse this. Give me some time. I was just ready to roll with it right away.
Yeah, so that's cool. I'm glad it's a new development. As we're doing this podcast, we are learning as we go, basically. And making it a little bit tighter, a little bit better each week. So, but we're still rough around the edges and learning how to get this thing off the ground.
Exactly. I mean, even in the video and the edits, I was thinking as well as I'm finishing up other episodes, I go back and I was like, oh man, even just a couple weeks ago, it was a little rough. It's a little rough. So hopefully for all of you, it gets a little bit more natural. But that's also hopefully the fun of this podcast is that, it's starting off very unnatural for us. And as we move forward, we're trying to figure things out and get it together, and we get new ideas every single week. So we see this podcast as a work in progress. So yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into it this week. Zach, how's your job search going? How's the hunt for your next? Yeah.
it's been it's been interesting. There's been a lot of ups and downs in all of it, and so I've been contemplating going back to my previous company, not
Hmm.
because they're kicking my door down or anything like that. They're not saying, "Oh, we need to have you back. We need to have you back." It's that some roles opened up that would fit me very, very well. And then you try to decide, is that where you want to go? Do you want to pursue a new opportunity? Um, and why, a lot of people ask, like, if they let you go, why would you ever go back there? It's like, well, again, I could use the insurance. I have kids. It would be nice if I could take them to the doctor, and all of that. So those are some of the thoughts and things that, as they let me go, the company was nice enough to give me a grace period with my insurance where it's like, hey, you've still got a 30 days that your insurance will be active, which is cool. I've been let go from companies before and they did not do that. So I'm like rushing quick to go like get a bunch of dental work in. I'm like, oh, I got to go get my son his new glasses. Oh,
Hmm.
we've got to get into the dentist for them and the orthodontist so that they can get their braces going. And all this. So it's a weird rush to like, I've been having constant medical appointments where I'm like, oh, Zach, that thing that you should have been getting checked out years ago, you better go get that thing checked out. Better go get this thing done. Oh, you were saying your knee was bothering you. Better go get that done. Your ear was messed up. Go get your ear fixed. So I'm like just rushing to the doctor every single week and trying to plan it out with my wife and my kids to get it done. And so you have those stresses. And then I think as that stress develops, it really does make you start to overlook some other things that might be important to you, where I'm like, I will consider maybe this other job because it's going to give me this benefit and it will take this stress away of having medical insurance for me. So maybe I wouldn't mind grinding that out. And then you go and do
Yeah.
that and you're like, man, I hate this. And now you're back to the job search again. And that's been a weird cycle for me as well, because I've had that with jobs where I'm like, I'm just going to use this job as a stepping stone. I don't want to do it. I don't like it. And I think when you're in your 20s or maybe even early 30s, that maybe makes a little bit more sense. You have a little bit more energy for that. But for me personally, I'm like, these stepping stone jobs, I'm like, really, I want to go torture myself for another 2 years while I work or while I look for the perfect career or the perfect job.
Hmm.
And it's just been frustrating. And so on
Yeah.
the actual job search as well, I look at these postings and one, I'm not finding the jobs that I'm expecting to. There's not as much out there. More and more and more, they're expecting you to cover everything. Like, oh, you have to do this. You're a graphic designer. You're a coder. You do video. You're 3D. You know motion graphics. Oh, and you can do HTML. And we're going to pay you 65K. And I'm like, what? What do these people think they're going to get out there? Like, this is insane. And then you look up at a lot of the places will show you how many people have applied. The job has been posted for less than 48 hours and they already have over 100 applicants. And I'm like, well, not even going to get a call back. Like, there's already 100
Hmm.
people in front of me. Is it even worth it to put in? And, obviously I would advise people as well, like, yes, still put in. You don't know. A lot of times people are just spamming all of these, just kind of like I am as well. I'm just like, you're not even really qualified. You don't even fit this. And it's up to the recruiter to sort through all of that. But still, it's not a good
Yeah.
feeling or sign when you see a job and you're like, actually, I would like that. That would be great. And then you're like,
Now,
oh,
does it feel like you're kind of playing the lottery in a way? Like you're just like hoping
100%.
that one of these, you're just gonna like win one of these chances to maybe have some security for yourself? Like,
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And I've never thought about it that way. Is that 100% that's what it feels like, is that you almost need to be at the right place at the right time. That if you're not sitting at your computer all day, constantly refreshing, like, did this one just get posted? There's automatically going to be hundreds of people in front of you. So
yeah.
even it might seem some niche job. I don't know. Have you ever heard of there's this kind of art installation place that's in a few cities called Meow Wolf? Have you ever heard of Meow
Yeah,
Wolf?
yeah, I've seen that in Santa Fe.
Yep. So there's one in Santa Fe. There's one in Denver here, where I am. And
Hmm.
they had a job posting for a director of creative operations. And I'm like, that could be a really fun place to be. Like,
That sounds cool.
really weird, cool, artistic stuff, doing all of this. But again, I went up there and I go, oh, this has been posted for 2 weeks. Oh, they have the classic over 200 applicants. Like, I'm still going to put in. This would be cool, but I wasn't there when they posted it. And so even if I'm better than somebody else, I know that all of these resumes are just hitting an inbox and they aren't looking anymore because a recruiter is going to ask a hiring manager, do you think that you have a candidate that you would want to hire in these 10 that I've provided you? And they go, yes, I think that we would. Okay, I'm going to schedule the interviews. How's it going? The recruiter's going to check in. But everything else after that point is just going inbox, inbox. It's just sitting there. It's not going to go anywhere because they don't
Hmm.
want to deal with it. So even if you were the best candidate in the world, most qualified, and say you even invented Meow Wolf and you were the original designer, you would not be getting a call back at that point. So it is frustrating that it feels like it's a lottery now. It doesn't feel like the old days where, hey, we're going to look at these resumes, we're going to call the most qualified candidates, we're going to keep it open for 2 weeks and get back. Now it feels like a mad rush of, did I get there in time to even be considered for this job? So
Hmm.
it's that part of it is extraordinarily frustrating.
Yeah, and you're in this position of being kind of desperate or in this like one down where you're like in this needy situation and you're just happen to be like one of 200 people like almost hoping and begging and trying to impress this company that has all the power in the situation and to get to gift you or give you a job. And that's a particular frame of mind that does not feel very good or empowering at all, in contrast to something like starting your own podcast or starting your own thing where you're like making opportunities for yourself the ball is in your court, it doesn't feel like you're one down trying to impress anybody. You're literally honoring yourself. When that employer is not honoring you at all, you're often being ignored, and you're just sort of a weird, annoying inconvenience. And of course, when you do get, if you do are lucky to get that job, you now have to fill that role as best as you possibly can, and you might not. It might not even last. It might just be precarious. You might not even fit in the company. Um, and so it's like when you make your own opportunities, like if we're doing this thing and then we get a call from somebody who's like, I really like what you're doing. Like, hey, I've got this opportunity if you're interested. Those feel so much better. It feels so much different. Like when when you're kind of the prize, so to speak, and people are looking to work with you in like a mutually beneficial, collaborative way, then like, I hope I get this job because my security and my livelihood and my health depends on it. Boy, the stakes feel so high there, doesn't it? And it's just not a fun place to be.
100%. And I think it's an interesting point then as well, even with freelancing, that you bring up a really good point of, are you grinding out to make your freelance happen? And that's why this podcast feels so good, is that while yes, we put a lot of work into this and we want to grow it, and there's, we have plans of where we want it to go. We're not sitting here going like, all right, I got to start cold calling all of these agencies. I got to start cold calling all of these clients again and say, hey, do you have any work you can throw my way? They're not coming to
Mm-hmm.
seek me out and say, hey, I have a great project for you. Would you be interested? That feels much better than, I got to go kick somebody's door down. This is, do you like our podcast? If you like it, great. We like you too. We hope that you come along with the journey, and like and subscribe our channel so we can be supported. That feels way better than just trying to pander to everybody, or like these jobs and everything. Is that, and yeah, I agree. Like, I had probably my favorite job that I ever got was over a year ago, and it came from an old neighbor of mine. We hadn't even
Oh,
talked for a little bit, but I mean, we were close. We would have dinner together as families and all of that. And then out of the blue, he called me. He goes, "Hey, I think I got some video work to come your way." By the end of it, I was building new websites. We're doing new messaging. We're building out booths for conferences. We're doing videos. We're doing all this stuff, and it was a very collaborative process. It was like, hey, can you help me out with this? I'm like, yeah, what are we doing? We go, hey, well, what about this thing over here? Oh, yeah, we should handle that. Yeah, what do you think? Oh, I think we could do this, this, and this. Oh, well, let's go this direction. Absolutely, sure, that's fine. Let's do it. It was such a fun project to go through with somebody that wanted good work, that was willing to collaborate. They had their own ideas. Like, I think it's unfair of artists to be like, oh, these clients are such jerks. It is still collaborative. They aren't here to go, you do whatever you want to do, and I don't want to do anything. It is fun to work with somebody to go like, hey, I'm hoping to accomplish this. Can you help me get there? That's a much better way to go about it than to say, hey, I want you to push these buttons so that the graphics look like this. I don't know how to make Illustrator work, but I want it to look exactly like this. Well, now I'm just a button pusher. You aren't coming to me and saying,
mm-hmm.
hey, I really want to grow my business and I'm thinking about doing some advertising. Do you have any ideas for me? What could I do? And go, yeah, let's chat about this. And so you bring up a really good point that even in the freelance world, the corporate world, the full-time job world, having to do that grind when you start getting desperate, um, is, you really do start to kind of say, maybe I'll put up with this. Maybe I'll put up with this. Maybe I'll put up with this just because you're
Mm-hmm.
desperate. I want to keep my house. I don't want to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
So what am I going to be willing to put up with?
Yeah,
Um,
great question.
yeah, it's going to be weird. Well, and that being said, I am curious. So this week, well, I should say last week, we were talking about your Milkhead days. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of when you started off freelancing. Now, as you start getting more success and you started talking with Bill and the guys over there and going into Go Media, did it feel like a transition to you? Did it feel like a growing up period? Like, hey, I've made it now. These guys invited me in. And what was that process as far as, I know that you'd shown them some work and that they were interested in you and offered partner, but what was that process like going from Milkhead over to WMC?
Over to Go Media. Yeah, I
Or Go
mean, it
Media,
was like,
sorry, WMC. I keep saying WMC. Sorry. Yeah, Go
hey,
Media.
we'll get there. We'll get
Yeah.
to WMC. But no, when I was going from freelance, which is my Milkhead alias, to Go Media, it definitely felt like an upgrade an opportunity to sort of jump 5 years into the future with a couple of guys who were doing something similar to what I was, which was music industry art, kind of like badass or grungy or cutting edge, artistic graphic design in a much more organized way. They kind of had a business and a facade really of looking much bigger than they were. Like they had a lot more clients, they had payroll, they were beginning to have some of these hallmarks of a real business. And I was just a freelancer. So to join this team, it wasn't like I was getting a job at a corporate company. It felt like I had a couple other people that were like, it was like you were joining a band. And now we are more organized. So now you're going from the solo artist doing open mics to, wow, I've got a couple of guys who are serious about this and we're going to like make it in the industry. That's kind of the industry, the energy that we had. And so
Did it
when
feel
they
more
offered,
stable for you as well?
oh yes, it felt incredibly more stable because now I'm getting a weekly paycheck, and it wasn't much. The weekly paycheck wasn't much. They basically offered me like, I think it was $10 an hour at the time, but I was partners, so I was getting a percentage of the company.
Sure.
And so we shared in some of the benefits of the profit sharing and when we would take distributions and stuff like that. But that was kind of just secondary. That felt like a perk almost. I didn't need that money. I was so stoked at this opportunity. I was like, we were going to make badass work together and in a more organized way. So it wasn't like I got a job where I'm here to like do my work and get paid. I had a sense of ownership over it where it was like now I was part of the company. It was like my name and my branding was attached to it. And I will admit though, there was a couple of things that were like not quite, they were a little bit off for me personally, because I felt like my audience, the people who watched, who followed Milkhead, like on DeviantArt and others, they kind of thought I was selling out a little bit by like going to this company that's named Go Media, and they had a little bit more of a corporate presence. It was like, I'm no longer indie. Now I'm going to the next level up. And I was not Milkhead anymore. So I think there was some grief about like letting go of that total ownership of myself and my brand to now I'm sharing it with others. And with Go Media, they also wanted me to bring my freelance clients in to kind of fold my own business into theirs. And I was okay with that myself, but I had people in my ear that were like not really okay with that. They thought that I was giving something up that they wanted to hold on to. They're like, Jeff, they're taking something from you or whatever. I'm like, I don't see it that way. I see this as a great opportunity. But
Sure.
I kind of had to convince, when I was blogging about it, I'm like, Milkhead joins Go Media. And now I'm going to be using, now my name is going to be Go Media, Jeff. And I think people were like disappointed in some way, but they, of course, they didn't know where I was going to take a Go Media and how that was going to look. I ended up helping turn it into another expression of myself. So I still think I brought a lot of people on board with that. But
You were like Green Day before the Dookie album came out.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Well, and so that's interesting then. In do you still feel that way as far as like, yeah, that was the right thing to do to bring my freelance work in? Because I mean, for me personally, it sounds like if that was my situation, I would be okay with that as well. Like you still feel fine that you brought that in. You don't feel weird about that whisper in your ear. I've heard that as well.
No, because my freelance clients, okay, the clients that I did have, they're like, I don't want to pay Go Media. I want to pay you because you're cheaper. Like, I don't want to pay Go Media or go
Gotcha.
through this like extra layer of bureaucracy, even though it wasn't really. It
Sure.
just was like they wanted to hire Milkhead, they wanted to hire Jeff. I can still do their project. They just had to pay Go Media, and then I would get my weekly wage, and that rather than getting all of the money. I didn't feel like I was losing anything, but I think the perspective of clients was different.
Yeah,
They were used to me. They were used to the experience, and they didn't really want to be folded in. Now, some of them did. Some of them stayed.
sure.
But Zach, I want to make this clarification that a really good example that I think Bill brought up was like there was a tension between me and my entrepreneurial self, this like Milkhead brand, Jeff brand, versus Go Media. I wasn't like your typical employee who doesn't have an identity outside of the work, or if they do, it doesn't compete with Go Media. So there's a little bit of tension there with like how much attention and Jeff is going to pull away or add to Go Media. It was kind of weird. And a way that he described it was like a lemonade stand, right? I'm selling lemonade over here. Bill's selling lemonade over here. he wants me to help him out and we join forces. He doesn't want me to be selling lemonade at my own table after I get off work. Like, what is the point of
Exactly.
that? I thought we were doing
Yeah,
this together, you know? So
exactly.
that makes so much sense when you describe it that way, you know? So,
And that's how I feel as well. Like I've had people in the past come up to me. I remember um, there was a person that I knew that I was close with that was starting their own media company, and they were doing a lot of mostly doing weddings and stuff like that, but we're getting into some slightly more corporate, bigger paying clients and things like that. And in all honesty, when I looked at the work, I was not impressed. I was like, I can tell you guys are starting out. You're not video people. You're not graphic designers. You aren't classically trained on this. That's fine. And they reached out and said, hey, would you be interested in doing some projects together? Well, I'm like 22 years old, maybe
mhm.
25, upwards of that. I'm like, of course I would. Um, if it would have been approached that way, because the way that then they approached it to me was like, yeah, we would love to. If you bring clients in, we'll give you a finder's fee for that client. And I'm like, but then it's your work. Yeah. So then we can go and take it. We'll work on it. We'll do this. And maybe you can just help find us some more. They just wanted me to feed them clients. And I wasn't going to do any of the work. And I'm like, no, that's my name now that I've got to put on all of this. You want to just go, oh, we'll give you $50, but you're charging them like 3 grand and you're doing a bad job. Like if this would have been
Mhm.
much more of a partnership where, hey, let's work together. We're starting off. Can you please help us so that we can raise the quality of the product that we're putting out? We can do that. That would have been a very different story. Or, hey, when we get the smaller clients, we do this, or not even that. Like, hey, let's work together. We get this one in. But it was very much just like they just wanted to steal my clients. And I was like, this is
Mhm.
not collaborative at all. I would have been desperate for something like Go Media because I don't know if you realized it or even Bill realized it at the time, but even from the outside, from the very tiniest little peak, that's how it felt to me. Is that I was like, this feels like something that these guys are really in together, that they're doing it. It's being supportive, and all of I keep saying and all of that. I've got to stop that in these podcasts. I was on a quick tangent. I keep saying that. I go back and I go and all of that, and whatever that is, just
Oh, I've got my things that I
yeah.
wish I could stop saying. I can't.
But it was that perception. I think that that's why it was so intriguing to me is that I saw people in a similar situation to me, and then was able to get that camaraderie there. So as you start off and you start bringing clients in, what was how were those first couple months, years, and all of that? For me, some of the stuff that I'm curious about, and so please feel free to fill in some of the blanks behind the scenes that we can get to in a minute. But
Mhm.
for me, when you guys started launching the Arsenal, almost even before the Arsenal was at, and the vector packs and the brushes
Yeah.
and all that, I
Yeah.
think that's when, at least for me in the nation, that type of style really started to take off all over. And especially when I started seeing brushes in other people's work, that I was like, oh, they're using the Go Media vector packs. Oh, they're using
Yeah.
the Go Media stuff and all of that. And I was like, it really started to kind of transform the culture. Were you aware of how big that some of that stuff was going to go? And was it in an effort to say, hey, how are we going to market ourselves more? What products can we put out? Or was it something like Bill's just sitting around, he sees your work, like, why don't we just start selling that? How did
No,
that come?
so when I first started at GoMedia, there wasn't any idea of the Arsenal. There wasn't any idea of the GoMedia zine, which was our blog, which had a lot of tutorials, on there.
Mhm.
There wasn't any of that yet. There was our MySpace channel, and I already had kind of a somewhat following of other artists due to me being on DeviantArt and promoting myself with and networking a little bit with some other freelancers. So when I joined GoMedia, they were aware of what I was doing, and I continued to be kind of friends with them or network with some of the design community. And now when there was a point when I felt like, okay, I got on MySpace. I was promoting GoMedia on MySpace, networking with other designers, trying to get us popular and famous, and not really. I don't want to say that that was my direct motivation, but that was something that I could see happening, and I was like, wow, I want to make us a big deal, a household name, you know. So I was promoting Go Media through MySpace under with other designers. So it's like we were kind of looked up to and respected in the design community as like people that were doing cool work. And because that's how I perceived other designers like Angry Blue and Rob Dobie, Derek Hess, these other people that felt like they were my inspirations. So I wanted to kind of model them in a way. So I brought that energy into Go Media, where we weren't just Go Media working for clients. It was Go Media has like a presence in the design community as like a teacher or a mentor or an inspiration. And now Angry Blue and Derek Hess and stuff, they had this grungy style. And I know Justin from Angry Blue would release Photoshop brushes himself on his website for free, and giving away these design resources. Stock art, vector graphics were a new thing, but like it was common that people shared this stuff within the community. And I remember seeing Justin's splatter brushes all over gig posters and t-shirt designs in the music industry. And when you get good at this and you do a lot of designs, you start to develop your own resources that you reuse and recycle in other projects. And I was like, I want to make this stuff available to our designers and our community. And so through starting the blog Go Media Zine, which was basically just our news outlet for us to share and connect with these other designers. And I was like, let's just release this stuff. So I designed a simple web page that allowed us to put a bunch of these things and sell it with PayPal. I figured out a script that I could copy and paste and have like a little DIY one-page website for where I can sell this stuff, and made it real cheap. Like made each one $9 each pack, like a splatter pack, a skull pack, a heraldry pack, a flourishes pack.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't the only one making it, but I mean, like, it was kind of like, hey guys, let's all do this. Like, Dave, you do one. Oliver, you do one. Bill, you do one. And then we're all like doing it. We scanned the images, we vectorized them, we put them into these themed packs. And then I was like, well, if we're going to do like 7 of them, let's box them all together and put it into a set. We'll call it set 1. And then we will sell it all for a huge discount. So instead of like $70, we'll sell for $35. So that was our very first product. And we had an audience already because of MySpace and because of the Go Media Zine. So we announced it through that, and we started getting sales immediately. People buying our products and our resources because of the reputation that we were beginning to develop. And once we saw that, I mean, it was funny because I think Justin from Angry Blue was one of our first customers too.
Oh,
and
really?
He loved what we were doing, and we loved what he was doing. And it felt like this designers are sharing and creating resources and sharing with each other and supporting each other. So, and then I would take that and I would write tutorials on the blog about like how we did this cool illustration, because there were other tutorial blog websites out there that broke down illustration processes. I think there was like, oh gosh, I can't even remember. Like this was like maybe psdtoots.com, which was part of the would become the part of the Envato network.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these blogs that would feature news and design insights, we would try to get featured on there, and we would network with them and share links and stuff. So it was very much like that. And so I noticed that when I joined Go Media, I didn't really contribute much to the client services, but more like the design community, creating products and resources and insight and tutorials for the design community. And that became a whole separate part of Go Media that was pulling in revenue from digital products and teaching and mentoring and networking with other creatives. And then Bill and Wilson pretty much handled the client input, like working with the business to build them a website, bringing in clients and this and that. So that was the genesis of the Arsenal.
Yeah, you were making the money while you guys sleep. So you were kind of handling that side of the business, and then the client work, the day-to-day operations. Oh, that's interesting. Well, and then that makes a lot of sense then, because your name was all over that stuff. And I remember because I had found your work before and thought that it was really good. And then when the Arsenal came out, it was really interesting. It was almost, to me, it felt like I had access to your portfolio. I was like, this is so cool. I was like, look at all this great stuff out there. You've got this, you've got that. And I was just trying to figure out what graphic design was. I don't think I even really understood the difference between a graphic designer and an illustrator. And you can argue the lines depending on your perspective, but I don't know if I even quite really knew the differences. That I was like, is a graphic designer know how to draw? Well, not necessarily. Illustrator probably does, and all of that. And so what's the kind of difference there? And that's what it was like, is I was like, oh my gosh, you've got all of this amazing work available. And yeah, like you said, I did appreciate that it was really cheap. And then all of a sudden, when I start seeing it at other places, I was like, oh, these guys are going to rule the world. I was like, this is taking off everywhere. And I could easily just start pinpointing. I go, yep, there's that one. Yep, there's that one. And I started seeing it all across everything. And I don't know why this just popped in my head, but it reminded me, like, as it almost started going too far and people were overusing it. I remember
Yeah.
I was at a concert one time, and I don't know if you remember this font, but there was a free font out there on defont.com called Bleeding Cowboys.
Oh
And
yeah. Oh
it,
yeah.
I started seeing that everywhere. And then I started seeing it at, like, 'cause people were making custom shirts for like country music shows. And I'm walking down the street, like outside of a concert, and I see I'm like, there's Bleeding Cowboys all over again.
Everywhere.
Bleeding Cowboys everywhere I go. There's this dumb font everywhere. But it was
Hmm.
them trying to, like, I was like, they don't know the artistic side of this kind of like grunge movement and all this and all that. And I also didn't, but I didn't know how to make it, but I knew I could
Hmm.
recognize it when I saw it, when it was done well. So when you started off at Go Media, were you going into the office pretty much every day, or were you working at home as well? Like, so you grabbed your computer, your mobile, not mobile computer, and took it into the office, or they give you a computer, or what was
No,
it?
they bought a new computer for me when I started.
Gotcha.
It was like a Dell Optiplex or something like that. And they had a flat screen monitor where Bill was still working with a CRT, two CRT monitors on his desk. He had not upgraded to the flat screens yet, which were just getting introduced.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I want to say something before that. You talked about like the oversaturation of seeing these vector packs in the wild. Um, Okay, so one before we started the Arsenal, we would purchase stuff off iStock Photo, which was one of the biggest stock photo agencies in the world, and we would buy vectors if we needed to, stuff to save us time in our projects. Um, so when we're like creating this stuff, we're like, let's put it up on iStock, and then we realized that we were only getting like fractions of a penny for every sale, or 25 cents or 50 cents whenever something would sell. And we're like, we're not going to, this isn't going to work, so why don't we just do it ourselves? And that was like a big reason why we started the site, was in response to selling it on stock photos. But yeah, as they did get to become more saturated, there was a little bit of pride that we would take in seeing them out in the
For
wild. Like,
sure.
it's almost like you're a graffiti artist and you just tagged a train, and then you get to see that train and you're like, that's me. I made that mark. So there's a
100%.
little bit of pride that we would feel seeing our stuff everywhere. Like, especially on shirts from bands we listened to or we liked, or brands that we were fans of, to see them. Wow, they were customers of ours. They used our stuff. That is so cool. Now, there was one time we saw them in Target, and we would be critical of like how people would use our vector packs. And well, before I shared Target, we had this like user showcase area where we would display what customers would produce, and we would advertise it. And we realized that was kind of a bad idea, because most of the customers who bought our stuff didn't use them in a way that made them look really nice.
Yeah,
They
you're
kind of
like,
looked,
this doesn't look
we're
great.
like, oh gosh, I don't know, it doesn't really sell our products very well. So we kind of were like, we took that opportunity down. But anyway, when so this is a similar storyline with the Target stuff. So when we saw everything with Target, they basically copied and pasted our vector packs like all over the shirt without any real design orientation or theme. It was just like, let's just take the stuff in the pack and throw it on the shirt and print it and call it a day. Like literally all over prints with just like a vector here, a vector there, and it's like, or a giant skull here with a splatter over top. And it was just like, to us, it felt like no design sense. It felt like fast food design. And then so I wrote a blog post about this, basically saying, hey, Target, if you really want good design, you can hire Go Media to do it specifically. Don't. And then people were like flooding the comments with like, you were just shitting on your customers. People bought your stuff, and
Really?
now you're like tearing them down, telling them that their designs are shit. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I kind of am doing that. It's probably not a good call.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess you're right. I wouldn't have thought about that, because now that you say that, I might just be making up a memory, but I'm pretty sure that I read that and be like, yeah, they should. What are they, crazy? And like, I knew that my messing around with the packs as well was terrible. It was bad. But I also recognize that other people's were as well. Like, I don't know why I just held in such high regard that I was like, let these guys, let the professionals handle this. Okay. If you want to go make a t-shirt for your daughter's, birthday party that says Team Brittany and you've got a
Hmm.
picture of a skull on there, great, good for you. But if you're going to be putting it out there in your target, you can afford this. Do good work. Get these guys up there. Let them, show you how it's done and all of that. It's almost like, making a Super Bowl commercial at that point. Like when you see the bad ones, you're like, man, you really should have hired somebody who knew what they were doing. And then when you see
Yeah,
those
yeah,
good ones, you're
exactly.
like, man, great, great for you guys. Like that's how it's done. Your brand looks good, but everybody knows. Well, I shouldn't say everybody. Actually, probably most people don't. They're like, man, Acura is so smart for hiring Jerry Seinfeld and Jay Leno to do this epic car commercial. Like, you think that Acura hired them? No, they hired a creative agency, and the agency hired them and pitched this idea. Like, they left it to the creative professionals. They said, what do you think we should do? And then
Hmm.
that's how that came out of it. So yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
that's great. And then I'm sure you guys. So were you able to pull it off of iStock then once you got up there? Like so, you're like, this isn't
yeah,
going to work. We pull it off. We're going to do it ourselves. And then it's like buying a band from them at the or buying an album from a band at a show versus at a record store. They're going to get a lot more money that way. That was kind of the
yeah.
case as well.
And of course, being part of the record label or being part of iStock Photo, you get all this exposure that you don't normally have. And of course, you're paying to be part of that network. Um, it just was the payouts were so small. It was like Spotify. It's like, what's the point? I mean, you're just trying to look. You're not getting paid hardly anything. We were just at the right place at the right time as far as like selling the stuff before a lot of other people were. There was definitely some agencies, boutique agencies that were similar to Go Media that were doing it. I think You Work for Them was another popular one, and they had a rough, edgy style, sort of street art style too, a little bit more sophisticated than us. I think we were a little bit more geared towards sort of the rock crowd, rather than kind of the math rock indie sort of technicality stuff. They had their own thing, but this is something I'm thinking about. I want to talk about too, is because when Go Media was doing this, when we were creating these illustrations, there was a little bit of fear that it would take away from our originality as artists. That by basically giving people access to our elements, that people could duplicate our work in a way that would devalue ours, that would devalue the work of other artists
Sure.
by by making it accessible and easy for people to just grab some stuff that we drew and paste it into a design where they didn't have to create it themselves. Now that's so popular. Everybody nowadays uses templates and clip art in their work. I mean, even when we were doing it, we didn't draw every single thing by hand every single time. So this is like where artists feel like, where does my integrity end? Where does my artistic ability stop? Is it like, do I have to draw everything by hand and be the most original, or am I allowed to use stock? Am I allowed to use those splatters from Angry Blue and put them into my work in a creative way? Now, of course, if I just use his splatter, then it's really just his work that I'm now selling to a client.
Sure.
So I have to like make it original. So this was a big ethical, moral thing that behind the whole stock art industry, and Go Media was a big part of like responsible for blowing it up and making it a little bit more popular. And other people started competing with us and offering it for cheaper. I think like some free vector sites were popping up with like imitations and
Yeah,
things that were
they
very
were
similar to ours, and
not
we
nearly as good though.
popularized this vector pack phenomenon. So we made clip art a little bit cooler, and I think if you follow that train, it's like now we're into AI as like, you know, you could just basically just create a design from scratch without having to know how to do anything. And then if you sell that, it's like, so the integrity of the artistic creation behind all this design has like really, really diminished into something that does feel a little bit like fast food, sort of prepackaged design elements that you can just snap together. And now you've got a design. So I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think for you all, it was to be honest, I was surprised that it didn't get bigger than it was. Like, and to me, it felt like it got pretty big, and I felt like you all kind of revolutionized the industry. And were one of the first ones where it's like everybody was clamoring off of it. And like you said, especially as the ripoff ones started coming off that were making their own, the thing that I thought was fascinating the whole time is I don't think I ever found any that were as good. So it's like, oh, I might be able to get this pack from these guys or this one or that one. You're like, oh, you've got that, but it's not. even close to the quality. And that was really surprising to me, is that I expected that to start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I expected more and more brands. And I was like, all of a sudden, I was like, they're going to be redesigning Starbucks logo. They're going to be doing all of this. We're going to see these big, huge partnerships, because I really would have guessed that with how popular those packs were, and maybe it did. I know that you guys were able to get a new space, new office,
Hmm.
but I was like, I felt like, in a lot of ways, even like the Green Day trend, where it's like they're this small little punk indie band, they're going to be the big ad agency now that everybody is competing against.
Hmm.
Where you've got these big Chicago and New York agencies, and all of this, that I was like, Go Media is about to take all of these guys down, because there is a trend popping up in culture. But the thing that kind of happened, at least from my perspective, which is very uneducated and not necessarily thought out at all, is that the Go Media thing was very indie and still kind of underground. Like the grunge movement doesn't really fit in with a Starbucks or a McDonald's or a Walmart or something like that. But
Right.
at least for me, I saw it as an artist. I'm like, well, like most graphic designers or video people and all of that, they're not one trick ponies. Now that might be some of their favorite stuff to do, but we can do other things as well. Like,
Right.
hey, I can go shoot this really cinematic music video. Does that mean that I can't also shoot an engaging talking head video? No, that's not what that means at all. And did you
Hmm.
find yourself starting to get typecast throughout all of this? Like, was there any of that at all? Or like, no, we were happy to keep doing the same work over and over? Or was there any bit of a struggle as far as like, hey, we'd love to start getting up here? Or maybe the better question is where was that as you started getting successful? What was the goal, and where did you want to see Go Media get to? Or was
Well,
there?
yeah, I did think we did get a little typecast. I mean, of course, once you start putting a lot of work out there of a certain type, you will attract more of that. That's the idea. Now, we wanted to balance work that was high enough paying. Sometimes that's the corporate stuff versus the fun stuff, which is the more grungy music industry oriented stuff. And that's not that high paying. Even if you're doing T-shirt designs for Red Hot Chili Peppers or Metallica, you're not getting paid very much to do those, and they might not even accept them. A lot of it is kind of on spec, and you're not really even guaranteed to get it. But at least you have something cool in your portfolio that's got like a name that's associated with something that you like, that is like part of your personality, and we like to have that connection to the music. I think it inspired all of us. Like I personally was into kind of punk rock and emo music, and Bill was into electronica and techno, and him and Wilson got their start doing rave flyers, and Bill had a very comic book style illustration style. So he loved to be able to draw like sort of a heroic figure in like a really dramatic way with pen and ink, and like put that on a gig poster. So he got his start doing that, and so when we could get business that allowed him to do that, he was really happy. But of course, that doesn't really pay very much. So we have to do these websites for like this um, nutrition bar that's coming, that needs like packaging, and it needs like a website. And it's not that inspiring, but hey, at least it's going to pay. And it's another opportunity to do some different type of design. They would still ask us to do some of our grunge sort of themed work within that. We would still implement a lot of these things into it. And I think that's why people liked our style. But not every designer that we hired had that style or that affinity for grunge design. There were definitely some guys that we hired that were more clean, minimalist, more sophisticated design. Somebody you might want to get hired at like Whedon and Kennedy or these
Yeah.
more sophisticated ad agencies. And some of them kind of didn't think too highly of our like badass graphic design. It still felt a little cheap. It felt a little bit like Bleeding Cowboy. At some point, it started to become a little cliche, and we kind of wanted to move a little bit away from that at some point. So there was a phase between 2006 and like 2009 where that was like all the rage. But then after that, we were getting tired of it. I think I wrote a few blog articles like "Make it look like Affliction" was a really common
Yeah.
client request. So Affliction clothing, for anybody who remembers, was like a badass clothing brand with like skulls and horsemen and splatters and just like demonic looking cool shit and wings and feathers all over your shirt. And now it's kind of associated with sort of the Jersey Shore kind of frat bro, like muscle guys, like nobody
Absolutely.
really thinks that's very sophisticated, but it's kind of lowbrow. But they like it. But
Yeah. So what was the office like? And did that what was were there different evolutions of that? And I guess kind of what I mean as
mhm.
well is you go into work, are you pretty much at the beginning you excited every day I go in there, I'm working like 8 hours, or it's like, no, it didn't even feel like work. We were in there hanging out, and some days I didn't work at all. And we're just sitting there chatting, but work's getting done. We're taking it very professionally. How was that dynamic?
Yeah, at first it was like going into, well, we were working out of Bill's condo. So it was
Yeah.
on the first floor of his condo. And well, actually, when I first interviewed at Go Media, it was not at the condo that you went to that you
Oh,
interviewed
okay.
at. It was at his house in Cleveland Heights, and it was just Bill and Wilson staying there. And I went there, and I was kind of like, oh, I thought this was a lot bigger company than I thought. I didn't realize it was just two guys working out of their house.
I had the
Because
same
based on their
impression.
website,
Yeah.
they had a map of the USA with like points in California and Florida or whatever as like satellite Go Media locations. So I kind of thought it was bigger, and they told me that was by design. They wanted to make themselves look bigger than they really were, so they can
Mhm.
grow, get bigger clients and stuff. But no, they ended up moving out of there. They bought a condo in Cleveland, Ohio City area, and so that's when I first started. I got, it was like the four of us. I think me, Bill, Wilson, and Oliver were there, and me, and they bought me a computer. We all worked in their little flex space next to each other in the first floor, and it was 10 to 6. We worked there 8 hours. We would go home. Now, shortly after starting that, though, I felt like I wanted to really take this seriously, and I was going through something with my girlfriend. We had been together 5 years, 3.5, yeah, 3.5 years at that point, and we kind of almost broke up. And I felt like there's an opportunity there for me to move in with Bill at Go Media, because Wilson, who was sharing a house with him, got an opportunity with his girlfriend at the time down in Florida. So he ended up leaving to go follow her career path, her arc. So he worked remotely, and so that freed up a room. And I was like, Bill offered it to me if I wanted it, and I was like, I kind of want that. I feel like I want to do that. I want to go for it. It did not make my girlfriend happy at the time because we moved out, and I moved in with Bill, and then so yeah, we got done at 10 o'clock or at 6 o'clock, but like there's so much, like what else are you going to do? So we just kept working, and then it was this like 6 8 hours, 10 hours, pressure to keep working. I mean, it was hard to pull ourselves away from the computer. My worst habits of workaholism were enabled in a situation like that, where it was like, how can you stop working? You just want to keep doing stuff.
So you
And
liked,
especially if Bill's doing it, if he's working till 11 o'clock, you're like, well, I don't want to be the one, slacking
sure.
off or whatever. Even
Well,
though there
yeah,
was
exactly.
no pressure to do anything, it just was.
Yeah, now I look bad and all that. So
Yeah,
did you have kind of like that man cave experience where you're like, no, I love this place. Like, this is
yeah.
sweet. I have everything I need here, right in a small space where I don't need much more. I got my work here. This is what I love. This is what I'm dedicated to. The people that I like hanging out with. Is that kind of how
Hmm.
it was?
Oh yeah, it absolutely was like that.
So great. I had that with a buddy. We had an office, and Um, we both actually had families as well at the time. We had kids and all of that, but a lot of our remark was much more of like, man, I could live at this place just because we're like, it's small, it's minimal, got everything that we need. You go back home and there's toys scattered everywhere. Obviously, we liked going home to our kids
Hmm.
and all that, but you're kind of just, talking about another style. But we would sit around there, and a lot of the times we're like, all right, man, we actually got to work because we just start getting into like really deep conversations and all of this. And, hey, what are you working on? Oh, that looks cool. And the next thing you know, we're talking about God and the meaning of life. I'm like, man, it's
Hmm.
uh, it's two. We should probably get some work done. But we were of the nature that we wanted to work until like 9 o'clock at night. So starting work at 8 in the morning, my brain was not there. Like I still feel a lot of times I do my best work at night. That's when I'm feeling energized. That's when I'm feeling
Hmm.
juiced, and I can kind of get in a flow state. Maybe it's just because there's less going on and I have a really hard time shifting gears. So if I'm in the middle of something and something comes up, I'm like, what? I'm not focused on that at all. I can't focus on that. Or coming back to my work, I'm like, I don't know where I am. I feel like I've just lost my inspiration. I need to keep my groove. And it's gotten worse as I've gotten older. But I can work at night and get into that flow state. So when it was me and him in that office, that was just like, I was like, oh man, it felt nice to work. Like it didn't
Hmm.
feel like work at the time. We were still pretty young and hungry and like, this is so cool. Look at this thing I just made. Look at this thing I just made.
Yeah.
And you're kind of showing off to your buddies as well. And I would have to yell at him. I'm like, dude, you got to stop working weekends. You got to stop coming in on the weekend. And he's like, oh, I'll just leave it for this weekend. I'm like, you've got to stop doing that. And I was like, I'm not working this weekend. I'm not going to do that. You've got to go see your family. Like, he was like, no big deal. I like doing it. I'm like, I'm not saying you don't like doing it. Go see your family. Like, please go
Yeah.
hang out with your kids and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
he was just that much of a workaholic.
Yeah, I know. And I think me, Bill, and Wilson were all like workahol type of people. Like, and my ex girlfriend at the time wasn't really too thrilled about that. And I think that was a contention in our relationship that I wasn't putting as much time and effort into the relationship, planning things for us to do. I was really focused on work and my career and creating this stuff. And it did get to a point when we ended up hiring her to be like a temporary assistant, help, office worker, office manager, to help with some stuff. And she needed some time to or some extra money. She was going through a hard time, so she ended up working there for us and helping us out. And so we would be seeing each other during work now. So now we're hanging out, we're working, she's there doing stuff, and then her job just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, where she had more and more to do, and so it turned into a full-time job for her. But now at this point, her and I are working together. And so when I moved in with Go Media, it was only a year before I moved back in with my girlfriend, because after a year, I think it was 2007, I was like, okay, I can't be this close to Bill. I can't be this close to Go Media. Like, I need a break. I need to have some place to go home to.
Oh, good.
And
Yeah, yeah.
and at that point, I appreciated like all the time away from my girlfriend at the time. I was like, oh, I appreciate you. And then we ended up getting married, and then it became a whole thing.
Sure.
So
Yeah, well, and for me, it was kind of interesting looking back in retrospect. It was when him and I were running that shop together. It There was a lot of parts that felt good, but because there is no manual, or there could be a manual. There's supposed to be
yeah.
parents and stuff like that. As far as like what's a good, healthy relationship? How do you do this? How do you be a good boyfriend, husband, whatever? And what does that mean? And then, how do they subsequently be? What is a good girlfriend? What does a good wife look like? All of these things didn't really know. And looking back on it, it didn't feel this way at the time. But looking back on it is that I was kind of leading two different lives
Yeah.
and obviously that's going to cause problems in the relationship where back then I was probably much more blaming her for all of this. Like, why can't you support me? What's this? And then what I'm going to do instead of working it out with you is that I'm going to separate even further away. I'm going to do this
Mm.
and not include you because you don't get it. You don't understand me. So now I've got work Zach that wants to go to work, that's feeling inspired and all of this. And then I'm coming home and I've got home Zach that maybe now is not as happy as I could be because I feel like I'm getting judged for wanting to work. But really
Mm.
it's more of, not to put words in her mouth, I'd let her explain it more, but I would guess it's much more of that it's like it wasn't that at all. It's this that you were making another life for yourself and I'm not there. I don't know what's going on and you're pulling away from us. Where at the time I felt it was much more of the opposite. I feel like, oh, you're pulling away from me, and all of this. And it was not the case, is that it was like I didn't know how to include those two things together where she could be supportive of my career because 100% she was. It was a big decision for us to be like, you're really going to leave your corporate career and go and try to
Mm.
start this video production shop with one other guy. Like, what clients do you guys have? And I'm like, I just need to do this. This is going to be really good, creative. This is where I need to go. I'm starting to take
Hmm.
off. I'm starting to do really good work that I'm proud of and everybody else is telling me is really good as well. Like, I finally feel like I found my thing. And just to kind of link it back to Go Media, because for me, I think Go Media is almost like the first band that I fell in love with, where they're always going to have kind of a special place in your heart. So even though I'm not a graphic designer, I'm not an illustrator, I don't do that stuff. I
Hmm.
tried to do it and I'm not bad because I didn't know who I was. As I got into video and all of that, I was like, this is my opportunity to be like a Go Media. This is my opportunity to go and do that. This is finally somebody's telling me my work is good, and maybe I could get to a level where people respect my work because I've seen this growth and that's where I want to go. That's where I want to get to. But I was going the wrong path. It was more of video. Like I couldn't find out how to get video jobs and all this, and then finally weaseled my way in maybe 6 years late to the party. But then I was like, this is my chance, this is my opportunity. And she was super supportive. But I was leading two different lives. And so it wasn't really fair to her to be like, oh, fun Zach is at work. And then, oh, I have to come home and I don't get to be at the office anymore. And, oh, dinner needs to get made, chores need to get done, kids need to get watched. That's the Zach that I
Hmm.
have to deal with. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize that at the time. It took probably years
Mm.
and years and years. Did you have any of that going on with the relationship?
Well, we ended up getting in a situation where we were with each other all the time because we both worked at Go Media. So we lived together, and then we left to go to work together in the same car. We would drive back home in the same car, and then we would had the same nighttime routine, which was got to make dinner, and then we're too tired to do anything else, so let's just watch Netflix. And that was our routine for a long time, except for I had like side projects. I had band practice to do, so sometimes I would leave to go do band practice, and I don't really feel like she had much else going on. You know, I was always kind of had other things outside the relationship that I was focused on, creatively and professionally. So I was like, and of course I started to make more of a name for myself when I was doing WMC Fest. So that became like a huge, gigantic extra thing that I was focused on outside of Go Media that just took over my whole life. And so I don't think she appreciated that. And I think that's one of the reasons why she ended up having affairs and,
Sure.
which led to our marriage kind of the truth of our marriage really crumbling apart and then realizing we had to get divorced. I think it was both of that. I wonder how it would have been different if I didn't spend so much time trying to work and become
Yeah.
successful and all of
Well,
that.
and that's the interesting thing is because it's like that was the thing for me as well is that, I remember I would come back and I'm like, I've got all of these other things going on. You should find something to go and do. And it is, at least for me at the time, I was like, look, I'm trying to get everything out of here. And my opinion was, again, nice little quote from a movie because I live my life through movies and music, is a quote from Fight Club, which is, you choose your own level of involvement. And I was like, that's what this is. If you want to be involved, then come be involved. I'm not here to babysit you to say, oh, come and do this, and I'm going to help you do this. I'm like, if you want to be there, then go be there. If you want to do this, then don't go do this. And while I think that there's still some truth to that, for me, I didn't know how to have these other things and have a life. To me, it felt like a line in the sand where you're asking me to choose, do I go play hockey? Do I go play poker with my buddies? I was getting to be a pretty good poker player at the time. And to the
Mm.
point that I wouldn't say I ever really considered it, but in my mind, I was like, maybe I should go be a poker pro. Pretty good at this. I like doing this. Maybe I
Hmm.
should go do that. So I was playing poker a lot of the times. I'm playing hockey. I'm going to concerts. I'm doing everything but go to my family. And I think that was the difference is that it was like, this is supposed to be a big highlight of your life, but you're doing everything you can to get away. And so in retrospect, I can really see that. I'm like, man, you're right, because I do love my kids. I do love my wife. But when you're young and in your 20s and all of that, you're just like, I just want to go party. And that wasn't really an excuse. I didn't know how to be in a relationship. I was just like, well, we're
Hmm.
married. I mean, you're supposed to just love me no matter what now, right? Like, come on, figure it out. Support me. I'm going to go do this later. She's like, great.
Hmm.
Now I'm at home with kids. I don't have any friends. I'm not talking with anybody. I don't have a job. I'm not going out. And, it'd be nice if we could hang out for a little bit. I'm like, up yours. Like, it was not, you know, it's one of those that very much in retrospect, I have another insight on that I had to learn how to have like a passionate work project and then work with her that I just didn't know how to do that. And so having that other shop was difficult for me and did become kind of a point of contention. I don't regret doing it by any means. I regret some of the actions there, but it's now changed a lot more where now I can run my own little freelance business and be a lot more involved with my family as well, as opposed to I don't have to draw a line in the sand of I have to pick you or work. And that's a line that I drew, not her necessarily. So it was a weird dynamic.
Yeah.
How long were you guys working at Go Media together before? Like, was there times when you're like, this is really, really good for us. This has been cool that we get to work together.
Yeah, I would say up until maybe middle of WMC Fest, which I would say 2012, 2011. That's when we felt like things were good. You know, so we got together in 2003. That was when we first met. We got married in 2008. And of course, all these Go Media people were invited to the wedding. It was so things were, the things were all blended together, but in a really good way. She worked there with us. She was part of the company. She's a very important part of WMC Fest too, as far as doing a lot of important roles with the bookkeeping and merchandise and everything. She was outstanding with that. So we definitely, and then we would go home, and I felt like we had a great relationship even at home. The relationship was important to me, and I would notice this because my single friends would be like kind of jealous that I would go home and wouldn't want to spend much time with the guys or whatever. And it was like, oh, Jeff's got a girlfriend, the old ball and chain. You know, that's kind of how it felt. And I didn't like that because I valued my relationship. And it made me remember that teacher at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh who's like, you can't have a family if you want to be successful in this industry
Uh,
and I'm like, I don't agree with that. I want to have,
yeah.
I feel like I love my girlfriend and I want to spend time with her and I want to, that matters to me. There's something intangible about it that I didn't know at the time, but it was like very sacred, very important. And I did not like how these people who were successful in the industry acted like he just had to sacrifice that. And and I would see that with other people. It's like there was always a tension between my level of investment, even as much as I was giving at Go Media or at WMC Fest. I could have been doing more. Instead, I wanted to go home and take a break and spend time with her. And so there was this contention, like I wasn't working enough, wasn't working hard enough, could be working harder. You know, personal life is taking away from the success that we could be having as a business. Even though I think we all knew that no, you got to have a good work-life balance. You know, you can't just be this way. But there was some contention, not only because she also worked there and she would recognize problems that she'd be critical of. And so she kind of was annoying to my business partners at times too,
Gotcha.
because she would have an opinion about things, the way things were being run. And so there was like, I'm going to Bill, but he's got my wife in his ear too. And it's like, Jeff, your wife is really kind of
Yeah. She's
she's,
come between everything.
yeah. So there's tension there. It was tough.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. I mean, I've actually worked at two different companies with my wife. We met at work and then have left jobs and then came back together at other companies, like helped her get hired. It's a weird dynamic, but it's been nice to see how things have evolved. That I think a lot of it for us, fortunately, the evolution has come from problems with work and all of this and this passion of like trying to pursue creative arts. And, I think a lot of artists have, as far as their work goes and their dedication to their work or trying to get freelancers, all of that is that we feel like we have something to prove or we feel like we have a voice um, that other people might want to hear. And it's
Yeah.
just like we have something inside of us that's like, I need to be exposed out there. I need to get it out there. I've got a point of view. I've got an opinion that I feel like is worthy of sharing. And that's kind of an interesting thing to pursue, you know, that does kind of take a part of your life that it's something me that you're not sharing with somebody else. Like I have a point of view. Now, granted, there's better ways to do it, or that I think is that as I've gotten older, I understand how to make both of those work. And fortunately, because of some of that turmoil, it's actually enriched my relationships now. That I'm like, oh, I thought I knew how to be married and I didn't. Oh, I thought I knew what working on a
Hmm.
relationship meant, and I didn't. I thought
Hmm.
that I did. I was kind of actually being a dick. Um, and maybe that's not the case. Like we both have things that we have to work on, but it is interesting that work-life balance and then working with your partner as well, which by the way, this light just went out And now I'm
Oh yeah.
super duper dark, but that's all right.
No, it's got a little darker on your end.
Yeah, exactly. The light just burned out, whatever. Anyway, as we kind of wrap things up here, I am kind of, so you get started, and then just to kind of get it back to even like we should be working.
Hmm.
When did it start to get to, or was there a point, Echo Media, that you're like, I don't, and this might be a longer story as well that we can even save for later, but when was the evolution or the precipice to say, I need to leave? I don't feel like this is fulfilling anymore. And should I be working here? Should I be pursuing something else? And was that because of something personal? Was that because of work stuff? Was it both of it put together? And what was your work attitude towards the end there at Go Media?
Yeah, I remember around 2011, 2012, we would do these annual meetings where we would all sit together, especially around New Year's, and we would discuss our company goals for the year. And we would go around the circle, and everybody would get a chance to say what their personal and professional goals were. And at that time, I started to feel like I didn't have any goals, and I didn't want any goals. And I think I actually had on my list no goals. I want to have no goals this year. And so it was indicative of how I was feeling, where I was getting this ambitious part of me was starting to recede, and this like the doing part of me was receding, and the being part of me was starting to emerge. And so it felt like a revolutionary act to be like, I don't want to do anything. Like, can I do that? Can I actually not do anything? Like that feels so amazing to me and so rebellious and so true. Um, I was reading this blog at the time called Zen Habits, and it was about minimalism and like just letting go of everything in your life, and that started to be really appealing to me. And through that awareness and just on how I would feel with going to work, I started to feel more dread, and the weight of WMC Fest was really on top of me. Like I imagine we can discuss that in the next episode or something as we dig into that whole world. Um, but because of the weight of all of these projects on me and like the responsibility I felt, I just felt crushing. I just couldn't do it. I had no time to myself. I felt like, and of course my marriage was starting to get was failing, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Even though on the outside it looked like everything was good together, it's just that it wasn't. There wasn't any intimacy, and it didn't feel good. Um, I started to wonder if we should be getting divorced before I even knew she was having affairs. So it started to be like, what is going on? And then at WMC Fest and Go Media, it just felt like I was getting burned out and depressed. I started to take naps in my car in the middle of the day, and I started to wonder about what am I doing here? What is my life? Is this what I want to do with my life? I've had all the success in the world, but somehow I feel so torn up inside, so burnt out, jaded, depressed. I just needed to get away. And that was 2011, 2012, 2013. It was 2013 when I told my business partners that I was depressed. And I was so embarrassed to say that. I felt like it was like giving them this bad news when it's a really vulnerable thing to share. But I
Sure.
thought that they were going to be mad at me, like upset with me, like, oh, whatever, Jeff, this is a dream job. One of them even said that to me. They said, this is a dream job. Many people would love to work here, would be in this position. It's kind of like telling me that like I didn't have really a reason to feel depressed because I was living the dream. So I shouldn't be depressed. It's just kind of like my fucked up perspective. And there were times when I think when Bill tried to help me by giving me these books to read about like how to feel good, how to like use CBT techniques to try to like get my mindset back on track.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't finish those. I didn't want to read those. So it was almost like from their eyes, I was letting depression win instead of like my success muscle was triumphing over it. So it was like, no, there was something true that was speaking to me through my depression. That was like I've been ignoring for a long time. And
Well, and I think as we get older, it really speaks to, we've brought it up on the podcast before of like, what does this mean to work? And especially from a specific point of view, from a lot of people, it's like, you just need to get working. You just need to get working. And don't you want this success? Don't you want to be successful? Is that there's a lot of times that we push people to our ideal of success or what
mm,
society is saying success is, as opposed to just, you're like, that's not what I'm saying. Could somebody just listen to me for a minute? I just want to have a conversation. Like,
yeah,
I don't need you to solve my problem. That's not what I'm here, but I could use somebody to talk to. something
Mhm.
like that. I don't need ideals, but everybody's, and it is a very male thing as well. I'll admit it, but not to make,
No, that's right.
too overbearing or too broad of remarks, but men really like fixing things. Like, oh,
Yeah.
something's wrong with Jeff. Jeff, this should be good. And why are, you're successful. And it's funny to hear that because, yeah, I've been in situations like that before or had other people. And I remember one time I had a guy that I worked with that was really, really good. He worked for me and was a really good designer, did great work, was great motion graphics. And I'm trying to move up this corporate ladder a little bit at this job that I had. And I'm getting promoted and all of that. And I'm like, dude, yeah, I get promoted. I can bring you up and all this. He goes, wait, no. I'm like, what do you mean, no? And he goes, I don't want that. And I'm like, you don't want to move up and get promoted? And he's like, no, not at all. He goes, man, all I want to do is sit here in front of my computer and you give me a job and I sit down and get it done. And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, what? And that was kind of like the first time that I'm like sitting in my 20s of hearing like somebody didn't want to be uber successful or, quote unquote, uber
Hmm.
successful, or they didn't want to move up. They don't want to advance. Like, and it wasn't because he wasn't ambitious. He was as an artist. He wanted to do really good work, but he's like, I don't need that trouble. That was the first time that I kind of had that break with reality. Like, oh, maybe this is not so great. Like,
Hmm.
man, that does sound pretty good. A lot less responsibility. I just sit here, somebody gives me a project, I go about my day, and I can go home and I don't think about this place one little bit. And I was like, actually, that does sound kind of appealing. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I can feel that.
Yeah. There was a moment when we would hire some designers who had that approach more or less. And it's funny, the way I took it was that they aren't committed. They aren't
Uh,
in it like I am. They aren't dedicated. And it's almost like how I almost felt like I was a little selfish. It's so funny using these words, but I felt like I was a little selfish of them to not want to put all their all into this work, but that they're treating our company, which we hold so sacredly, as just a job. And I'm like, and we're interviewing people and we want them to sort of hold up this job with us as if it's like extremely important aspect of their life that we need all their energy. And that's one of the things that I feel like I hate when I'm going out into to look for jobs, that they're going to want that from me because I wanted that from our employees. And it's like they could have just been, I just want this job, so I and then do the job, then go home and enjoy my life. Like
yeah,
that's how they thought of it. They didn't have this sense of personal ownership or stake in it, if like this job was what my success here is, what how good I am as a person. They didn't go home at night and start tweeting and writing about themselves as if they were there's something about me, right, that needed to put myself out there, that I've got something to say. And perhaps it's my own narcissism that has led me to do that. I don't think it's all that is. I think there's something um, I'm after that is real. But like, just because I didn't want to just have a 9 to 5 where I just go show up and then I come home to live my boring, mundane life. No, I
sure.
had an excitement. I wanted to build something and to create something and to make a legacy and to be remembered, which I guess you can say are all hallmarks of narcissism, or you can just say it's all hallmarks of men,
Sure, exactly.
men, and what we want to do in this planet. Because, like that's what we're here to do, to build and to create. I don't know.
Well, and I think
But
men especially, I think what it sounds like is that we get caught up in, and I know that I did as well, of my work is my identity.
yeah.
Of like, this is who I am. This is what I do. My job is my identity throughout all of this. And it's like, as I've gotten older, the more and more that I pushed away from that, like, once I kind of saw the ugly truth behind that, I was very wrapped up in, of course, my work is my identity. I want you to know that I'm a video producer. I'm this, I'm that. Like, I was even nervous to tell people that that's what I did because I'm like, maybe I'm a fraud and all this and would have that. But I was like, that's who I wanted to be. Like, I wanted to be the guy
Hmm.
and go, I'm a video producer and all of that. And it's then I take a step back and I go, this is really weird that I'm like, and it is an interesting thing with society when they go, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't say I'm a dad or I'm a husband or I'm a guy who loves poker.
Right.
I'm this, I'm that. That you really do. Your whole identity gets wrapped up in what is your work? What is your job? That's who you are. And when other people don't treat it that way, you're like, you're not living life to the fullest. You're not giving all of this. This is who you should be. And so it is interesting that, yeah, as you kind of start to realize that and you hit your depression, everybody's like, Jeff, let's work harder. You have such a good thing here.
Right. Yeah. Depression seemed like a problem to be solved that we can help get you back on track to make sure you're happy and successful. What can we do? Yeah. And it's funny when people ask about like, what do you do? You know, it's about what do you do for work?
Yeah.
I have such a hard time answering that question, and I've had a hard time for years because I've been deconstructing and breaking down my identity since 2013 when I began this journey. Has led me to where I'm at now. So just the other day, I think I was at the Super Bowl party, and one of the guys there was like, "How's work?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, I hate that question because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. What am I supposed to say? I don't know what I'm doing for work. I don't care about work." And then I feel like ashamed of it that I'm like don't want to work and don't want to do anything. And then Kara tells me she's like hold on a second. I'm getting text. I gotta set
Sure.
silent. But she tells me she's like he's just trying to connect to you. He doesn't really care. He's just trying to say, "Hey, how are you, man?"
Yeah.
But that's like how he does it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I'm like, I take it so literally. I wish I had an answer. I used to always have an answer,
Yeah.
and I was always so stoked to tell people about what I did. Oh man, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like you got to see it. I was so passionate because it was my creation. And since I don't have any of that, I don't feel passionate. So when someone asks me, I kind of feel insecure, and then now I'm all like in this weird, insecure, nervous state, and I feel like I'm so exposed and like I'm such a loser and all of that stuff. I wish I had something better to say. And so I'm like, maybe I'll talk about something. Like if I start talking, I'll talk about my anxiety. And I'm like, oh God, I'm just bringing it down. He doesn't really want to know about my
Yeah.
anxiety, does he? So I should have said, I'm good, man. Work is going great.
Yeah.
How are you?
I know because I was like, I've had the same thing now. It's like I've been laid off. And they go, "Oh, how's work going?" I'm like, "Really bad. I'm not working. Like, I don't know, but maybe it's good." Like, I'm the exact same way. Like, I don't. I hate getting asked that question, especially now that it's like, "Hey, how's work?" Because last time they talked to me, I was probably like, "Oh, it's so good. This is great." And then why am I humiliated that I don't have a job right now? Like, it's
Yeah.
I'm putting it all on myself that I have to be humiliated that I don't have a job and I'm not working. And you're right, that's not even what they're trying to do. If somebody's just trying to say hello, and I open up all of this other stuff, and it's like, Jesus Christ, Zach, I think you're overthinking
Hmm.
this quite a bit. And I'm like, no, I'm not, but I know I am, but I'm gonna try
Yeah.
some. So
You know, in 2013, when I started to break this down, there was a guy I listened to on the Smart Passive Income podcast. His name was Sean Webb. He wrote a book called How Emotions Work and Humans and Computers, I think. And he had this perspective that was really refreshing to me about like who you think you are, and that's your ego. I mean, it was basically Buddhism 101. And it's like who you think you are is like not who you really are. You have this ego, which is like your sense of self, and you attach all of these things to it, such as work, your political party, your sports team, your role in your family. All of these areas make up who you are, and the things that you're going to type out into your Twitter bio, like this is how I identify. This is me. But I was like, it was so refreshing to be like, I'm not any of those things because on a deep level, I knew that was true. And I'm like, I was tired of identifying as whatever I put in my Twitter bio. I wanted to be nothing. I wanted to be, let all that go and get to the real truth of who I am without any of that stuff. And so that's the thing that kickstarted my awakening process as I ventured into that direction instead of going back into the world of like reinforcing the identity of me as a all-star rock star designer, whatever. But it's kind of humiliating and embarrassing when you talk to somebody that's kind of still in that paradigm and you don't have any of those markers of anything good to say. And I feel insecure, so I'm not going to be speaking highly of myself. And then how do I describe myself from these mystical perspectives that I have that sound so pretentious when I put it out loud?
sure.
It's just like, I am the presence of God just embodied in this. You know, it's just like,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think it's a good place for us to wrap up and pursue next week. So before we go, what's inspiring you these days?
Well, you know, this week I decided to watch the Bo Burnham special from 2021 called Inside. I don't know.
Yeah.
You familiar with Bo Burnham?
Oh yeah, I've seen that special. It's great. I love it.
It was really cool, you know. And then I was looking into a little bit more, and somebody was like, he's got nothing on Tim Minchin. Have you heard of him before?
No.
So he's another like musical comedy guy that's like offers like commentary on society and stuff.
Hmm.
But like I watched him and I was like, holy shit, okay, yeah. The guy's right. Bo Burnham is like amateur hour compared to this dude.
Really?
Even though I feel like Bo Burnham is one of the most incredibly talented people I've ever seen.
Sure.
Um, I'm like continually amazed by him. And of course, I'm curious about his like arc, you know, as a content creator from 16 years old, being pushed, thrust into viral fame to kind of like pursue this as we all sit and watch him. And he has like panic attacks and his mental
Yeah.
health is suffering as we elevate him as a star. But he's like brutally honest about how that's affecting him and how we're all affected by it. And he's like, I have to churn out content for you guys. You know, it's like, what is it? And so I'm like just fascinated on a meta level about like what Bo is and how what he represents as the creator and how we are doing this, like killing ourselves mentally through this whole process. Like, what is happening?
I love the
Um,
paradox that he brings up and presents. And then that special, I was so pissed off when that special came out because it was so good that I was like,
hmm,
from a creative standpoint, from even, I was like, this guy doesn't give a shit. He's going to go get a camera and film himself in his house and make this video work. And I was like, and it looks brilliant. And he's not
hmm,
sitting there agonizing over some details, but then even talks about it. Sometimes he's like, I've got these setups, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And what the hell am I doing? And the back and I was like, it was such a great peek behind the curtain, so well executed and filmed and produced. Yeah, I was in love with that special. It's great.
hmm,
It's definitely on my
yeah,
top list as a content creator, somebody that's even in video or original content that I'm like, that guy really tapped into something that that came out really, really good. Really figured out his situation well. So
yeah. So, what about you, Zach? What have you been inspired by this week?
here's the thing that woke me up. And so, not to be a brown noser, but your music track got me into, got me back into some old bands and music videos. So, as we were discussing inspiration and stuff like that, you're like, I don't know, man, what do you want to hear? Check out any of these tracks. And I listened to a bunch of the tracks. I'm like, I don't know. These all kind of sound pretty stocky to me, but I'm like, what about this band? This band sounds like this, or these guys sound like this. And then as I'm sharing links, I'm like, oh, I love the way that these guys made their music videos. So I really like this band called Pup, and all of their music videos feel very homemade. Like they're really sticking with the, hey, I'm going to get my buddy that's got a camcorder that knows a little bit about video, and we're going to go shoot a video. And it's just going to be dumb and stupid. And we feel like we're in high school or college just making dumb videos. And I'm so jealous of the videos that they make. And so that was, I started going through their whole catalog again and all the videos that they made and all the dumb low budget. And they've just got like stupid wigs on in front of a green screen and it looks terrible, but that's kind of the whole vibe. And, I
Mhm.
love that. And then it always makes me think about, the inevitable of you can be a victim of your own success, especially when you're a punk band, is when are you not punk anymore? And that was kind of like a theme of their latest album of like, are we sellouts now? Are we too big? Like we're getting popular. People like us. We're getting bigger venues. Are we not punk rock anymore? It's kind of how I take some of
Hmm,
that stuff. So I really
yeah,
like that journey to see because there are some people that you're like, you totally sold out. Um, and then there's other ones that I think have not really sold out. And they're like, we just evolved. We're people. We changed. I can't make the same music over and over and over again. I want to do something different. That was never part of the deal of, if a requirement for you to like me is that I only do this. And then you have other bands that kind of did sell out and came back like, yeah, we didn't like that period. We're going to go back. We like doing it this way. And so I like to see that navigation. So they are a band which, in a day when you can say punk rock is dead, that there's still punk rockers out there. And then what happens when they start getting some fame and all of that?
yeah.
They're one of the bigger names in punk right now. And I'm like, they're selling out pretty big places here in Denver and all around the world.
Hmm.
And so,
Yeah, I listened to them. I like their sound. I had heard about them, and I've heard good things about them. I just never really listened to them, and so like hearing that track that you sent me took me back to like 2007 or 2008 when that style of music was what I was listening to often, and it kind of had a similar flair, like this really well done DIY kind of like noisy, angry, but like really catchy, poppy at
yeah.
the same time, like really good. It wasn't. It was better than I expected, so I'm gonna have to check out their catalog.
Yeah, they've been a good one for me. They're one that I can just put a whole album on, especially kind of their last two albums. Have been great, and I've gone and seen them live twice, and they've got an
Oh,
interesting
cool.
YouTube channel. He did a great, almost like acoustic song during the pandemic. That I still love that song. I can't believe they didn't put it on an album. And it was, yeah, I've been really loving those guys that I was like, as a punk rocker, to hear them, I'm like, all right, maybe punk isn't dead. This is the modern age punk band for, the new kids and the high schoolers to latch onto. I was like, these are your guys that'll guide the way for you. So somebody's still doing it right. So,
That's cool. Great to hear.
well, on that note, another fun one, Jeff, and for everybody else, we'd love it if you hit the like or subscribe button. Do or do not, but definitely helps us out. And we will see you next week. And this is We Should Be Working. Thanks, everybody.
See you.
That's stupid. I'm not doing that.